This podcast is an invitation to feel and experience the souls of famous old Hollywood homes and to have an in-depth journey to the areas where they're located through interviews with longtime residents. Either you're a fan of old Hollywood in Los Angeles, planning to have a vacation, or, an even bigger step, considering a certain area for your future home. This is your opportunity to receive valuable information and insightful advice you won't find anywhere else.
Hello, and welcome to my podcast. Are you in the mood for California? Today we'll explore and feel Griffith Park, followed by an interview with incredibly talented David Melville.
Griffith Park is wonderful because it really is a park that you feel belongs to everybody in the city. And it's such a joy to come out on the weekend, and you can see birthday parties and picnics, and people go there to gather, and they go there, to celebrate good times. And there's so many different. And I was just there meeting the architect, talking about the permanent stage that hopefully will open in 2025. As I was getting in my car, there were a bunch of people getting out of a car dressed as monsters because they were going to go and do a photo shoot or a short film or something. It's just, there's always something amazing happening there.
Masha Korpacheva is a California-based realtor and a member of the National Association of Realtors in Los Angeles. She's an advocate for selling and buying homes with soul and practicing mindfulness in real estate. With master's degrees in spiritual psychology and linguistics, Masha brings all of her skills to work with her clients. An intuit and empath, she has touched many lives with her outstanding ability to see beyond the visible and helping to come to better understanding of issues and their resolutions. An adventurous world traveler, from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to exploring the Galapagos Islands, Masha has a particular passion for the City of Angels. Having landed in this paradise and adopted it as her home, she's been sharing old Hollywood stories since 2007. In the mood for California, feel the soul of old Hollywood.
And now, are you ready to experience Griffith Park? At the eastern edge of the Santa Monica Mountains in Los Angeles, Griffith Park unfolds like a sprawling tapestry, boasting an expansive 4,210 acres of untamed wilderness and meticulously landscaped parkland. A dynamic blend of natural chaparral covered with terrain and carefully manicured picnic areas, this urban oasis stands as one of the largest municipal parks in the United States. Picture this. Griffith Park's elevations range from a modest 384 feet to a breathtaking 1,625 feet above sea level, offering a panoramic view of the surrounding landscape. Amidst the arid climate, the park plays host to a captivating array of plant communities, from coastal sage scrub to the verdant embrace of oak and walnut woodlands, all the way to the vibrant riparian vegetation nestled within the park's deep canyons. But Griffith Park is not merely a haven for flora and fauna. It's a multifaceted gem of entertainment and history. Positioned at its heart is the Los Feliz neighborhood, housing iconic attractions like the old Los Angeles Zoo grounds, the Autry Museum of the American West, the Griffith Observatory, and of course, the world-famous Hollywood sign. Often compared to illustrious counterparts like Central Park in New York City and Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, Griffith Park stands as a titan in its own right. Delving into its rich history, we find that Griffith Park's origins trace back to Griffith Jenkins Griffith, an eccentric character who, after a successful stint in mining, purchased Rancho Los Feliz in 1882. He endeavored to lure residents with an ostrich farm and, intriguingly, tales of a ghost named Antonio Feliz haunting the property. Following a tumultuous period marked by Griffith's legal troubles, his vision for the park took a philanthropic turn. In 1896, he donated a significant portion of the land to the city, marking the birth of Griffith Park as we know it today. Despite facing personal challenges and a tainted reputation, Griffith continued to envision grand additions to the park, including an amphitheater, observatory, and planetarium. As the years unfolded, Griffith's dreams materialized posthumously. The Greek theater graced the park in 1930, followed by the completion of the Griffith Observatory in 1935. Subsequent donations, land acquisitions, and transformations of private land into public space expanded Griffith Park into the sprawling wonder it is today. In a unique twist, the park received an additional gift in 1944 when the Sherman Company donated 444 acres of Hollywood land open space, further enriching Griffith Park's ecological diversity. The grounds of the Griffith Park Zoo, which closed in 1966, underwent a fascinating transformation into a recreational area, blending remnants of animal enclosures with inviting picnic spots. Today, Griffith Park stands not only as a testament to nature's resilience, but also as a living canvas of history and recreation. The echoes of its past reverberate through the Hollywoodland residential community, the shimmering Lake Hollywood Reservoir, and the iconic Hollywood sign that watches over it all. And as the sun sets over this expansive urban wilderness, the Free Shakespeare Festival breathes life into the park, continuing a tradition that adds yet another layer to the richness of the experience of Griffith Park. And here we are. Welcome to Griffith Park. I'm so excited to have David Melville with me today. David Melville is co-founder and managing director of Independent Shakespeare Company, or ISC. He is the writer and composer of Red Barn, which performed in the Independent Studio in the fall of 2012. With ISC, he has played many of Shakespeare's leading roles, including Hamlet, Richard II, Iago, Macbeth, Henry V, Benedict and Leontes. He also plays the clown, as evidenced by ISC turns as Costard, Launce, Sir Toby, Touchstone, Stephano and Dr. Pinch, with spinoff band Dr. Pinch and the Pinchtones. His London appearances include the Almeida Theatre productions of Hamlet and Ivanov, both featuring Ralph Fiennes, Mother Courage with Glenda Jackson, and Henry VI in The Wax King. On Broadway, David made his U.S. debut in Hamlet at the Belasco Theatre in 1995. On TV, David created and starred in the Travel Channel comedy series Lawrence of America. Film appearances include Ironclad, The Understudy, and Perfection. Earlier in his career, he was a private detective and then brand ambassador for Bombay Sapphire. He traveled the United States preaching the virtues of gin and discussing golf with liquor executives. David trained at the Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Art, London. David will share with us his experience of living in Los Angeles and what it feels like to perform Shakespeare in Griffith Park. Hello, David.
Hello, Marsha.
Oh my God. I'm just so excited to have you as my guest today. It's just so special. Thank you for your time.
I'm very honored that you would have me.
Oh, well, David, could you please share a little bit about your journey from England to the United States? What actually motivated you to make that move, and how has living in Los Angeles influenced your life and career? How would you describe the city and its vibe to someone who has never been here?
Well, my move to America was prompted by falling in love with an American.
Oh,
I was in a production of Hamlet starring Ralph Fiennes that was in London, and it transferred to Broadway in 1995. And Melissa was one of the American actors that joined the company when we came to New York. And we played in New York for about 4 or 5 months. And we fell in love, and I went back to England with the cast and then realized I couldn't live without her and came back and proposed. And then we got married, and I ended up living in New York. I really never planned on living in America, but that's sort of how it ended up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually started Independent Shakespeare Company in New York in 1998. And we did a couple of little shows together. And then we found out we were going to have a baby. And we realized we had to get serious about things. So I actually sort of think that I moved to Los Angeles to quit acting.
Oh, that's interesting.
Melissa's sister had moved out here. We had to leave our apartment for one reason or another. And for trying to find another apartment in New York was just a nightmare. And then we had a baby coming along. It was time to get serious. So we had a little money saved that we could put down on a house. So we moved out to LA. And I was working in New York mostly as a waiter. So I figured if I'm going to be a waiter, I might as well do it in the sunshine by the ocean. And forget all this acting stuff. And so we came out here, and I tried being a waiter for a while. I wasn't very successful at it. So we decided to start producing little plays again. And that's kind of how it ended up, starting this Shakespeare festival. But we love Los Angeles. It's been amazing. I'd visited when I was 19 and when I was on a break from drama school. And I just fell in love with the place then. I loved old movies and everything. I was a huge fan of Humphrey Bogart.
Mm-hmm.
So, LA still has a lot of that old sort of, 30s and 40s architecture. And, I love being in Hollywood. And it seemed to me that, and I know a lot of people say that Los Angeles doesn't have any history, but it seems to me that the place is steeped in history, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry. So
right. And architecture too.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't hard for me to make a decision to come out and live in Los Angeles. And don't regret it at all. It's a wonderful place. And I think to describe it to someone who's never been here before, it's a wonderfully relaxed, casual place. I think there's a lot of really interesting people here. And I think the great thing about Los Angeles is that you really get to say who you are. You get to be the person who you say you are, rather than in Britain, where I come from. I always felt that you're born into a family and a class and all this kind of thing, and it's kind of hard to, if you say you want to be something different, then people kind of fold their arms and go, well, prove it. And they're skeptical, and they don't like success. And there are many wonderful things about Britain, but it's a little bit hard to move out of the niche that you're born into. Coming to LA, that was, and America in general, but Los Angeles in particular, because it's a city full of dreamers. But you really do get to be who you say you are, or at least people will give you the credit to be that, and you get to pursue your dreams, which is amazing.
Very true. You're so right. Los Angeles truly is a place where you can truly step up into who you are and show it in full bloom. And this is absolutely an incredible thing about the city. I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, I don't think I would have had the courage to have done what we did here, setting up a theatre festival in London. I just would have talked myself out of it. My friends would have talked me out of it, But in Los Angeles, people would go, that's a great idea. You should do that. And then you go and talk to people in the city and they go, that's a great idea. Let's help you do that. And it's amazing.
Yes. Well, could you please tell us a little bit more about the inception of Independent Shakespeare Company, or ISC, the abbreviation, and being a co-founder of ISC? And you've been instrumental in bringing Shakespeare to audiences in Los Angeles. So how did it all happen?
Well, there's a long story. I'll try and make it really short. Once I'd moved to Los Angeles, to New York with Melissa when we got married, Melissa was quite a successful regional theatre actress, so she'd be away working an awful lot. I wasn't working at all, really. I was working, as I said, as a waiter, but I also had another job as a private detective.
Wow.
I had spent a lot of time on the Lower East Side. It was mostly with counterfeit copyright infringement, sort of chasing people that were selling fake Rolexes and fake Louis Vuitton bags and a lot of stuff on Canal Street. And often you would be assigned to go and sort of sit in a doorway and watch the comings and goings of counterfeit goods and report back. But you had to sort of have some kind of cover,
Right.
So one day I was assigned to watch this place in Canal Street, and all I had was a copy of The Village Voice, which I read from cover to cover while I was waiting to see if someone with a suitcase was going to walk through the door. And I got really engrossed in this article by this chap called Aaron Bell, who ran a little theatre called Todo con Nada. And he wanted to produce all the works of Shakespeare in one season, and he was looking for collaborators. And I started daydreaming, thinking, oh, we should participate in that and maybe put on a show. And I just cooked up in my head this idea for a production of Henry V, and I told Melissa about it. She got really excited about it. So the two of us kind of started figuring out how we would put that into action. And we didn't do it as part of that festival. We did eventually, with some friends who ran a small theatre on the Lower East Side, we put on this one show. And it was at 10 o'clock at night, because it was a theatre that you shared slots. There was a 6 o'clock slot, an 8 o'clock slot, and a 10 o'clock slot. In February, in an unheated theatre on the Lower East Side in New York, we did Henry V. I think we only had about 4 people in the audience.
Wow.
On the first night. But then, the production was well received, and by the end it was full. We were sort of addicted after that, and we just kept on putting on shows. And then, as I described, we decided we had to, get serious about our lives. So we moved to Los Angeles, and then we, after I got bored of being a waiter, we tried remounting a couple of those shows. And then a friend of mine actually been walking through Franklin Canyon Park. It's sort of at the top of Beverly Hills.
Yes.
There was an unused amphitheater up there, and he sent me some pictures, and he said, you should do a show here. We went to check it out and thought, that's a good idea. So we did the show there. And then rather than playing to sort of 30 people a night in the little theaters, all of a sudden we were playing to hundreds of people, and we made it free. And it seemed like we'd sort of, alighted on this kind of magic formula. It didn't work out that we could perform in that space again, but so we moved to Barnstable Park in East Hollywood, and we did 6 seasons there, and it grew from a few hundred to like 500 people a night. And then it was just becoming a problem with parking and all the other things happening in the park. So the city helped us to move to the current spot now at the old zoo in Griffith Park. And it really took off once we moved there. And then we were playing to, upwards of 1,000 people a night. And it has become this sort of popular thing. But it's always, I think, really had its sort of roots in this idea of being something that's accessible and something that's really embedded in the community. And that's something that we really sort of developed at Barnstable Park, hopefully appealing to as broad a coalition of people as possible. And I think we found a playing style that's really sort of immediate. Even if English isn't your first language, you have a chance of understanding what's happening in the show. And there's always a lot of humor, a lot of music, and it's really started to develop this kind of community spirit. That's something that's particularly that happened as we went on in Griffith Park. We noticed the audience was sort of policing themselves a little bit. They determined to have a good time. And meet their neighbors, and people share food and picnics, and where normally these events can be quite sort of policed by ushers and stuff like that. We found that the audience was kind of doing a lot of that work themselves. So it really has become this kind of feel-good event that I feel like we as the company put on, but the audience and the community really collaborate to make it the thing that it is.
Very, very true. Yes. And I must attest to that Shakespeare in the Park is one of the best feel plays in Los Angeles, because every time I come to experience it just so special. It's so warm, and the audience is warm, and everybody's eating and drinking and chatting before the play starts and at the intermission, and the actors are so warm, and it feels like they're your friends. It's incredible.
Yeah, that wasn't always an important thing. And I actually went back to the first performance that we did in that little unheated theatre, because we were on at 10 o'clock at night, and the show that was before us was called Pigoletto. It was a sort of comedic version of Rigoletto with a man in a pig suit.
That's brilliant.
He would go on well past his allotted time. So we would we wouldn't even get into the theatre until 10:15. So we'd have to be setting up in front of the audience. So we would always sort of chat to the audience as we were setting up. And then afterwards we would kind of talk to them. And we liked that immediacy with the audience that, there wasn't this sort of fourth wall or like, we come in at the stage door and leave by the stage door and we never really see each other as anything other than, the performers on stage and the audience in their seats. But in the park, we've sort of held on to that. And because we take a collection afterwards, there's always an opportunity to talk to the audience. And we're there when we're setting up at the beginning, we're there at intermission. And it's great because you develop, I've developed quite close friendships with audience members throughout the years that I don't think we would have done in a sort of more traditional theatre setting.
Very, very true. Yes. And so were there any strategies originally that you consciously chose to use in order to engage and connect with the viewers, with the audience? Or did it just come out naturally?
I think it was very organic, really. It's interesting because obviously, there's a few of the company members that have been with us for a while, but every year we take on a few new people and some people aren't that comfortable, sort of talking with the audience. And actually, part of Shakespeare is that there are these soliloquies and there are these moments that are directed to the audience. When Hamlet says to be or not to be, or, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave and I, he's communicating directly with the audience. And some actors find that hard to do, especially in a setting like the park, where the first half it's in daylight. So you can see every audience member. In a nice modern indoor theatre, the lights come down, you don't really see the audience. So you can sort of, if you want to, as an actor, imagine that they're not there. But in our theatre, you have to be conscious of them. And I think it really helps to lift the plays, because I think Shakespeare's intention is that in those moments, the characters are communicating directly to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing we have to encourage the actors to do. Some actors are a little bit shy to do that. And then the other thing is, no one's forced to do anything. If they're not into it, they don't have to go and meet with the audience. But if they do want to, then that's certainly helpful. So that's really the only sort of strategy, I think. But it's very organic. It just sort of happened, out of necessity rather than, us thinking about what would be the best way to do that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And at the same time, Shakespearean theater often demands a deep understanding of language and culture. And even though Shakespeare works are timeless, they can be pretty challenging for modern audiences. So have you adapted your approach to performing these plays specifically for an American audience, or in what way are you trying to make Shakespeare more accessible and more understandable?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think there's sometimes a sort of an idea that Shakespeare is almost written in a different language and needs translation, and that's not really true exactly. I mean, it's written in modern English, but there's a lot of words that we no longer use.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that it's written in a very sort of stylized verse form. So for the most part, I mean, some of it's written in prose. And those are the things I think that are a little bit more artificial. And unless your actors are really sort of addressing that, that's where it becomes harder to understand. So we work quite hard trying to get a company-wide approach towards speaking the verse, which means you have to follow certain rules. So rather than modernizing it, we actually have to encourage people to approach it in a much more old-fashioned way. A lot of modern actors will communicate verisimilitude or seeming authentic by saying and a lot, and a lot of pauses and stuff, and those things don't work for Shakespeare at all. Shakespeare's quite specific about where he indicates you should pause, and then if you're speaking a line of verse, you have to take a little break after the end of each line and try not to pause in the middle of the line, and then you can keep the verse flow going. But if you do that, it actually helps the audience to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that we do, and it's a little bit technical and probably a little bit boring, but the end effect is that it actually really helps the audience's understanding, and it gives the actors something to work on a little bit, like a musician practicing scales or something. It's something that's not really addressed enough, I think, in the various training programs.
Mm-hmm.
So actors may have a little knowledge of it, but they're never really sort of encouraged to stick to it. So we really encourage people to stick to that. The other things that we do is obviously we have to edit the plays a little bit if they're very long because the park does close. The gates
Right.
close at 10:30.
Yes.
So there is a finite amount of time. We have to try and get the shows in around 2.5 hours. And some of them, if you do Hamlet uncut, it's over 4 hours long. So we edit for time. We do substitute a few words. We try not to, but there are certain words that really, in certain circumstances, are just confusing. For example, say the word votary means a nun.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really use the word votary anymore. So sometimes we might substitute a word like a nun or something like that, or try and find a word with similar syllables that will help. And then there are some words that, they have different meanings, but they sound like a word that might cause offense. Like there's a word that means miser, which begins with N,
Mm-hmm.
very inflammatory word these days. So if we see that word, it doesn't mean something racist, but rather than cause any discomfort in the audience, we just make a substitution. So, but beyond that, we try not to do too much. The comedians, on the other hand, have a certain amount of leeway to improvise. But I think that's actually true to the spirit of Shakespeare, because Shakespeare says in Hamlet, when Hamlet's giving the speech to the players, he says, let your clowns speak no more than is set down for them, which I think seems to indicate Shakespeare probably had a problem with clowns saying whatever they felt like to get a laugh from the audience rather than what Shakespeare had written. So we feel that gives us a little bit of license, especially as some of those jokes have maybe not stood the test of time. Last year we did Macbeth. I played the porter, and the porter has a whole bunch of jokes which are sort of ripped from the headlines in 1603 or 4 or whenever the play was written. They were maybe funny in 1604, but by 1605 everyone had forgotten about it. So, but that's what's in print, and so if you do that joke 400 years later, it really doesn't land. So in those instances, we'll try and find a substitution that's maybe contemporary and will make sense to the audience. So those are ways we can make contemporary flourishes, and and then in the production design, we try to not get too bogged down in big sort of theatrical concepts, but we try and explore costume silhouettes that are maybe more contemporary. I don't think we've ever actually done a production using Elizabethan and Jacobean costumes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not by any sort of rule. We just haven't done it. We've done medieval costumes and stuff, but often we'll do stuff from the 19th century or 20th century just to give it a sort of overall feel, but without sort of trying to express too much about specific locations and time. And I think that sort of helps people to feel like it's maybe more part of the modern world. And then we put in a lot of more contemporary sounding music.
Right.
We often have live music like we do in Midsummer Night's Dream at the moment. Midsummer Night's Dream is kind of inflected with disco.
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of disco touches throughout the play in the costume and music. And then at the intermission, the band come out. We do some disco numbers. It's great because the audience gets up and dances. It's an intermission dance party.
Yes. Well, your productions are absolutely ingenious. And I would tell that from my perspective, the audience can absolutely relate to the plays, to the actors, to everything that we see and hear. And it's a pure joy to see Shakespeare's plays through your performances.
Oh, thank you. I think one of the wonderful things about Shakespeare is that, more than any writer of his period, he really sort of understood the things that are common to us all as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Falling in love and jealousy and ambition and revenge and, some of the great things about being a human and some of the really nasty things about being a human. But whatever it was he picked, those things really haven't changed much over 400 years. So
yes.
Once you get past all the things that have, there's a lot that's changed in those 400 years. But he's sort of really sort of honed in on the universality of the human condition. And that's why once we get down to that, I'm always so excited when the audience, feels that they can relate to his work and these characters and these ideas that, had their inception 400 years ago.
Yes, very true. And we are thinking that we're evolving while no, we're still the same.
Plus ça change is the French.
That's right. Well, at least we can get a laugh at it, right? By seeing ourselves through, Shakespeare's eyes. So, well.
Yeah, I think there's something really delightful, and you have this sort of connection with history at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
laughing at something that an audience laughed at, the same joke, 400 years ago. There's something sort of comforting about that.
Yes, yes, very true. I agree. Very comforting. Well, David, Griffith Park is an iconic location in Los Angeles, and ISC has performed Shakespeare plays there for many years now. Could you please describe the experience of performing in such a natural and historic setting? What challenges and rewards does it bring?
Griffith Park is wonderful because it really is a park that you feel belongs to everybody in the city. And it's such a joy to come out on the weekends, and you can see birthday parties and picnics, and people go there to gather, and they go there, to celebrate good times. And there's so many different. And I was just there meeting the architect, talking about the permanent stage that hopefully will open in 2025. As I was getting in my car, there were a bunch of people getting out of a car dressed as monsters because they were going to go and do a photo shoot or a short film or something. It's just, there's always something amazing happening there. It's an area, of course, of extreme beauty, and the wildlife there is extraordinary. And the last couple of seasons we've been, I was going to say exiled, but it's not really exiled. Because of COVID, but also because of some of the construction work that's happening towards the permanent stage, we couldn't be in our regular spot for the last 2 years. So we were in this little dell at the top of the hill, which is really, it's only a sort of like 500 yards away from where we would normally be, but it's more secluded. And we were suddenly exposed to a new sort of cast of creepy crawlies that we hadn't met before.
Creepy crawlies.
There were tarantulas walking across the stage. There was one time a hawk flew down during a performance and swiped up a poor unsuspecting squirrel and went off with it. There were rattlesnakes under the stage. There was an incredible sort of array of bugs. We actually had in Macbeth, we had a raven sound effect that attracted a whole family of or sort of covey of rival ravens.
Wow.
Real live ravens that would come and they were looking for this raven that we had. And, sometimes during a performance, a bunch of people will come up on horseback and, stand on the top of the hill behind the audience and watch the show. It's just, the park life is amazing. Of course, it's an area of, natural historic beauty. And the old zoo is quite a dramatic place as well, because there's these old bear caves that were built in the 30s, I believe, as part of the WPA, and they're really quite atmospheric. And if you go up into the hills, there's little trails, and the old zoo cages that are there. They're probably, they're obviously they wouldn't work today. Seem like they might have been rather cruel because they're small.
Yeah,
and I don't quite know what they had in all of them, but I believe the caves that are by our performance area had bears and lions. So there's a lot of people say there are a lot of ghosts up there. I've never seen one myself.
Not yet.
But I found came across some photos of a young Jean Harlow in the 30s, maybe in the 30s or the 20s, late 20s, doing a photo shoot I think it was in our little spot up there, because I recognize some of the rocks.
Wow,
a lot of history up there. It's beautiful, and obviously there are some challenges that come with it as well. And when we were at Barnstable Park, we were right by a helipad for the children's hospital, which would really drown out anything. So we were glad to get to this more secluded spot where there were fewer helicopters. When we first moved in, there would be a nightly chant of coyotes. Especially they would, when we were doing Hamlet in the scene when we buried Ophelia, almost like clockwork, they'd start howling.
Oh my God!
There's yes, inadvertent sound effects happen. And there's other challenges to it as well. I mean, sometimes there's some unwelcome traffic coming past the stage. The teenage for a while, not so much anymore, but up in the hills behind the caves, there was for a while it was sort of a fad for teenagers to go up there and do things that their parents would certainly not approve of, and then come down in a sort of a state of fortification and extreme courage and scream expletives at the stage and stuff like that. So the Rangers, it definitely comes with some challenges.
Yes, I can imagine, but still, over the years, Shakespeare in the Park has thrived, And I'm looking forward to you having the permanent stage, as you mentioned, hopefully in 2025. And Los Angeles can be such a transient city. And for me, Shakespeare in the Park, since I first saw one of the plays at Barnesdale Park and over the years at Griffith Park, it has been a very permanent fixture of Los Angeles for me, a permanent cultural fixture of Los Angeles. And I'm wishing you and Shakespeare in the Park to continue thriving and continue bringing us the joy of Shakespeare and the joy of community. And while we are enjoying this incredible natural setting as Griffith Park. So thank you so much for what you're doing, David.
Oh, thank you so much, Marcia. That's as I always say, it's our privilege to do it, and we feel very lucky.
And thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And I hope the listeners of the podcast will find the time to check out Shakespeare in the Park as well, because summers in Los Angeles are not summers if they're without Shakespeare in the Park.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for tuning in to feel and experience Los Angeles and Griffith Park with my special guest, David Melville. If you enjoy my podcast, In the Mood for California, please sign up for future episodes at your preferred platform, and please leave your feedback. I really appreciate your time and support. You can follow me on Instagram at In the Mood for California, and check out my website, www.inthemoodforcalifornia.com. I'm a realtor with Beverly & Company Luxury Properties, and my license number is 019-78714. Selling and buying homes with soul is not just my real estate strategy. It is an intuitive and holistic approach that embraces your values, aspirations, and conscious intentions. If you want to discover the power of mindfulness in your real estate journey with my compassionate guidance, I'm here for you. Our next encounter will happen in the new year. And as we step into 2024, I cannot express enough gratitude for all your support, dear podcast listeners. Your enthusiasm and engagement have truly made our virtual connection come alive, and I look forward to exploring more fascinating topics together in the upcoming year. Cheers to the exciting episodes and discussions that await us. In the next episode, we will witness a remarkable concept that fosters a sense of extended family and community, elevating connectivity and inclusivity within our bustling metropolis. So looking forward to having this experience with you.
In the Mood for California, feel the soul of Old Hollywood.